Hey, welcome back to Mohawk Motors. Thanks so much for coming back. If this is your first time here, welcome. Today I'm going to be doing some shift tuning in the Turbo 400 of the 6.0 CUCV. Just in moving it around the yard and driving it up and down just out in front of my house once or twice, the shift points are way too low. If you remember and if you've been following along, the transmission in this truck is the original transmission with a shift kit installed that I did, but it was originally behind a 6.2 liter diesel. So the governor in this transmission, which is what controls when it shifts gears, is set up for that engine. And the 6.2 really was never meant to rev past 2,500 RPM. As you can imagine, this truck, this engine is just barely getting into its power curve at 2,500 RPM. So we're going to pull the governor out. We're going to change the springs in the governor to see if that will make our shifts a little bit higher in the RPM range and make the drivability better and let us actually feel a little bit of power of this thing when we take it out and drive it. So let me show you where it's at, how to do it, and we're going to learn together. There's no recipe of what springs to use to get what shift points. You just kind of have to try it out and see what you get until you find the combination you want. Okay, we're under the truck. On the back of the transmission, right up here, on the Turbo 400, there's this little cover. And it's got 4 half-inch head bolts that hold it on, and just a paper gasket behind it. Now, under this cover is the governor. That's what we need to get out to change our shift points. So once you get the 4 bolts and the little cover off, right there is your governor. And it just slips right out. And yes, you're most likely going to have some transmission fluid running out when you pull that cover off. And then this is your little governor unit. It's got the little helical cut gear on the end. As the transmission spins, it spins this governor. These little arms fly out, and they're controlled by springs, and that's what helps tell the transmission when it needs to shift. So let's go over to the workbench and we'll get our instructions, and we'll try some different springs in this thing and see if we can't get it to shift closer to where we want. Okay, we've got the governor here on the bench. Now, this should go without saying, but it is extremely important that you keep this thing clean. Don't get a bunch of grit or other stuff in it, because as these weights swing out and in, there's a little spool valve inside of here. And it only takes a teeny tiny little piece of grit to jam up that spool valve, and then you get no shifts or stuck in a gear. So it's extremely, extremely important that you keep this thing clean. Now, my Transgo transmission kit, like I said, it came with all the shift kit stuff. It also came with the instructions and springs to adjust the shift points using the governor. Now, it doesn't say, there's no solid recipe of this spring and this spring shifts at 4,500 RPM. This spring and this spring shifts at 5,500 RPM. It really just gives you guidance of the earliest shift, you use this combination. So if you want to shift at 1,500 RPM, you use these 2 springs. The latest shift, if you want to shift at 10,000 RPM, I'm just making these numbers up, it doesn't actually say that anywhere, you use these 2 springs. I know I can rev this engine safely to 6,500 RPM, so I'm going to go at, like, I'd say from A to H, I think I'm going to do the F combination of green and black and see where that gets me when I drive it. If it's shifting too late, then I know I need to change to a lighter spring. If it's shifting too early, I know I need to go further up into the range. But there's really no solid recipe on this of X springs equals X RPM. You kind of have to guess and check based on your build and what you're trying to do. So let's get these springs changed. Okay, so I've got my springs here. You can see they're all color coded. And there's the black one, and there's the green one. So according to the instructions here, F is going to be like the 3rd from highest shift point, which, I mean, I don't know what this thing is designed to have a maximum shift point of, but most common engines that I know of, you really don't, at least that you're gonna run a turbo 400 with, you really don't go max RPM is like 9,000 on a really heavily built engine. At least in my experience and what I've seen, usually if you're spinning past 9,000, people are starting to use power glides and things like that. So I'm gonna get a little pick and we'll get these old springs pulled out and we'll get the new ones put in. Okay, I've got a couple little pick tools here. It says very explicitly in the instructions, you don't need to take it apart to change the springs, so I'm not gonna take it apart. But I've never done this before, so I may struggle a bit. Got my little hook-shaped pick. See if I can get this old spring out. Oh, there's one. The other. So those both look, I mean, they look identical to each other. They feel like they've got about the same amount of tension. Again, I mean, I'm not measuring this in any kind of accurate way, as the black spring from Transgo kit. So it doesn't say that it matters what side you get the springs on, so I'm just gonna see if I can't squoosh it back in here. I think I just invented a new word, squoosh. Oh wow, that wasn't that bad. Alright, so now the green spring is definitely shorter than the other ones, but feels like it's a little heavier too. So, who knows? Like I said, this is guess and check. We'll try this out. Wow, those actually went in there way easier than I expected them to. I thought I was going to struggle with this. But, alright, we got our springs in. We'll bolt our little cover back on. More fluid came out than I expected, so I'm gonna have to check the transmission fluid level and make sure that we're not low. But we'll get this put back in and then try it and see if our shift points are any better. All right, everybody, so took it for a little ride up and down the gravel road behind my house. I think it's better. It's really, I'm not gonna be able to know until I can take it out on the road and get to, like, you know, cruise at 25 or 30 miles an hour and see what gear I'm actually in. Because under light throttle, I really can't even tell that it's shifting. But I did notice in that transmission fluid that ran out when I pulled the governor cover. I don't know if you can see it in the video, but there's enough real fine, I mean really fine metal in that fluid that it has me a little concerned. Now, it's all new frictions, all new steels, brand new torque converter, several new bushings, so maybe this is just break-in. I don't see any like chunks or hunks or significant size flakes, which is good, but definitely something I'm gonna keep an eye on, because I really, it sure would be a bummer if I had a transmission failure before I really got to try this thing out. But I think for now I'm gonna leave it how it is, and like I said, later this week I have an appointment to get tags for it, and then I'll actually be able to get it on the road, drive it a little bit, and see what's going on. Well, like I said, I'm gonna wrap that up for this video. Now you know how to change the governor springs in your Turbo 400. Like I said, the governor springs are the most control over when your shifts occur, but there's also your vacuum modulator that contributes to that factor also. Once I get this thing on the road, I'll be able to do a more in-depth guide on how to tune the Turbo 400 also. But for now, I'm gonna call it good, get tags for it this week so I can drive it on the road legally, and then we'll be able to really dive into it and get it all tuned up. But thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Super excited to get you out for the first drive in this thing later on this week. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. It helps me out. I really appreciate everybody that's already done so. And we'll see you in the next video. Take care.